Not till about 10:30. Maybe it's too down there. It's great or fog.
Well, I had it, and then I had a piece of toast, and then I forgot it.
She's gritting her teeth.
Oh, back there, Amanda. Did Jesse put it in the bag? I did too. I put the bag in.
So do you have any words of wisdom for any of us?
Help me.
Yeah.
Just love one another. And you'll always be able to have a reunion like this.
Has there been any?
Everybody getting along so good.
Any slivers in?
Some of them
That's
are
what it
getting a little
takes,
bit.
is love.
He put some baby oil over there. He said if he put baby oil on
I
it.
agree with him. You
Why
did
would
a
you?
wonderful job.
No.
I think
Well, what is
whether this is about our 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th. Never had an argument yet.
You got the right sheet on.
He was at the...
Thank you.
Yes, so my.
There's great Grandpa Hunt and little Ella.
They had red.
Yes, the youngest.
Not my name. And it could
Youngest and the oldest on our side.
The youngest and the oldest of the Hunt clan.
Anyway, they're kind
She's unhappy with her grandpa. Great-grandpa. Great-great-grandpa.
Great as he is, he's not happy with it.
He's an expert at it.
Well, how about a memory to tell Ella? Do you have a memory of the lake you want to talk about?
Memory of the lake?
Spent a lot of time at their resort this week.
The most beautiful lake.
Their granddaughter,
This part
their
of the
daughter
state without
graduated
any
from high
question.
school with me, and she called me this week. She said, we're here for two
Been
weeks.
here many
And my
years.
16-year-old daughter is horse crazy. She'll come and
60
she'll
years,
clean
I
your
think.
barn out or anything. As long as she can just be around the horse and water level will go. Bring her over.
Yeah, we went up by Glen Pond, west of Glen.
She just won't holler at me.
At least you can
She knew better than that.
Yeah, you can drive right to it. It's the last 11 miles of dirt road, otherwise it's all paved. They're all...
I thought you were going to come out and ski.
I did, didn't you?
I missed that.
Get here early. Yeah, he was right after me.
Afraid to flash you with his white leg.
You realize for your prom leave, you realize that's only good for about an hour and that tunnel will be
Get out of our way.
I was telling him.
Boy, I'm making.
Help the old guy.
Get out of our way.
Talk about old age, you gotta move all the time.
Yeah, get out of our way. We're trying to make it.
Hold the chair, will you, so you don't get
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I'd love to.
Work with her, Sharon, or?
We worked
Let's not do that again for an hour.
PennDOT,
We had to move
but
the
she
circle
works
back.
actually at
Yeah, and it's only gonna last here about an hour and it'll be up there
works in
again.
Roseville now at a building.
Last for maybe a half hour and we'll be moving again.
Relaying it all too.
Okay. So the first question I want to know, and this is something that I've asked my grandpa Okerlund, but you know Okerlund's not as smart as the Hunts and Conways, so. What was the first one is, what is the biggest difference you think between when you grew up and when your grandkids grew up? What do you think is the biggest difference in the two generations, in the two lifestyles they lead?
Tremendous difference. One thing, money is a heck of a difference.
There's more of it.
Where we used to get a nickel, thought we really had something.
Nowadays
they get $1 and they don't have enough. One thing.
So you think one of the big differences is they spend more freely?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. So, for the better or for the worse?
Oh, I think now the kids today growing up are much better. Although one thing I'd like to point out is the fact that we didn't have as much as the kids are that have now, what they've got here now, but I think we appreciated what we had back there a little bit more. Because there wasn't, like Jack said, a nickel was a big thing to us back then.
So nowadays when the kids go to a movie and get popcorn and pop, it's not a big deal. How big of a deal would that be when you were growing up? Would that be a once a month thing?
If we had a a nickel to get into the show, we were hitting high on the hog.
So that was huge. That was a huge deal to go to a movie.
Huh?
That was a big deal to go to a movie.
Yeah, once a week we'd go Saturday morning and to watch the serial. And they'd have the serial that was at the start of the show, that would run probably 15, 20 minutes, and then of course some big thing would happen right near the end, the guy would get bucked off the horse or something, and that'd be the end. And we had to go back the next week.
To find out what happened.
We had to go the next week to find out, did he hit the ground or did he get caught or what?
So then,
That was the big thing.
Our night of going to a movie, when we were kids living over there, the old CC camp was up on the corner, right?
the CC camp.
Yeah.
And we'd go up there one night a week and watch a movie in there. And that was our going to a movie.
He doesn't know what a CC
don't know.
No?
He doesn't
I
know what a
have
CC
no
camp
idea.
It wasn't in Conservation Corps is what they were called.
Conservation Corps.
Yeah,
Or like WPA?
huh?
No, that was when the kids, usually from about 18 to 23 or 24, 25, didn't have any jobs, and the government would pick them up just like they were in the Army, and they built these camps. Well, they had one up here on the corner, built these camps, and the kids would go in there and they'd give them military clothing and stuff, and then they'd feed them and bunk them, and then the kids would go out all day and they'd cut down trees. They built a lot of these trails.
Really?
They built houses in some cases and did any number of things that they did for a period of what, 3, 4, 5 years before until about the war started, and then of course.
So this is before, this is late 1930s. 37, 38, 39.
I'd say 38 to 41.
So what's that?
Tell us what World War II started.
And then that got cut off. They're taken away
Yeah.
to go
Yeah, they have to
fight for
go
the country.
really in the army.
So that kind of brings me to my next question, because obviously the big difference back then, I mean, that was coming out of the Depression. So money was a lot tighter, especially in rural areas where you kind of lived more hand to mouth off the land. What was, when World War II started, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, where were you when Pearl Harbor was bombed? Do you remember? Because I remember when 9/11 happened, I can remember exactly where I was. Where were you when you remember Pearl Harbor was bombed? Do you recall?
You have to get these two guys to answer that because I wasn't.
Wait over here, buddy.
Well, I was in the service, and that morning, it was Sunday morning,
Right here.
my brother and I got tickets to go to, or got passes, and we were going to, we lived in Richmond, which was across the bay from San Francisco, and we hitchhiked into San Francisco, and we went down to the harbor where Joe DiMaggio had a restaurant and stuff, and we wanted to go in there. And we finally got in there, and we had just walked in there, and we stood up to the bar to get a drink and find out, and some guy said, "Oh, what are you guys doing here? What do you mean?" There's a war and the Japs are bombing. And he said, "Listen to the radio," and he turned the radio on, or he had the radio on. He said, "The Japs just bombed Pearl Harbor." So that's where I was when the war started.
And that's how you learned? You were sitting in a restaurant and somebody told you?
Yeah, we were.
Wow.
We just walked in there, and they happened to have the radio on, and they heard the radio, and of course everybody was listening then.
Yeah.
And well, we got to get the hell out of here. Everybody's due back. All soldiers, military men, due back to your base immediately, regardless of what kind of pass you had. So we went out in the street, and of course we hitchhiked, and we didn't have to hitchhike. The taxi pulled up and said, "Where are you guys going?" And we're going to Richmond. We got to get back. Jump in the car, I'll take you.
You just
All the way around the bay, and never cost us a nickel. Happy to take us that far.
I imagine. Is that a similar experience to yours, Tom?
I can't remember. Really.
Really?
I can't remember what happened yesterday. No, I don't know where I was.
Well, you weren't in the service, you were still home at that time.
Yeah,
You were
I
still
was
home.
but I remember when the come out on the air that the bombing had taken place, but I don't know where I was.
How big of a surprise was it to you? Were you shocked?
Oh, one hell of a surprise.
Nobody expected it.
This was about, I would guess we run into it about 9, 10 o'clock, so that would have been about 8
8 in
o'clock.
the morning.
No, that would have been,
Oh no, goodness.
been noon back here, see? So he might have been home.
But you would say nobody was expecting it.
Well, no civilians did, no.
Sure.
I don't know if anybody did really, as far as we know, except maybe the top, like Roosevelt and the top
Yeah.
people that might have suspected it was going to happen, but
Would you say that is throughout the entire war, from the beginning to end, was that the memory that sticks in your mind the most, or is there another memory that you really remember, that when you think of World War II, what do you think, what pops in your head?
The one that sticks in my mind is when I shipped out from the West Coast, heading for, we didn't know where we were going, they wouldn't let us, they wouldn't tell you where you were going. at all.
Confidential, I suppose.
We evidently went back and forth, we didn't go straight over. Instead of, it took 3.5 days before we got there, and we landed in Pearl Harbor. And back and forth like this because they said there was worry about Japanese submarines in that area. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And after we were there for a while, we weren't able to tell our parents where we were or anything. And a woman that her husband was with me in the service there, she got a gift from him, and it was the staple or the paper on it was from up in Alaska. And she called my mother and told her, oh, I know where the boys are. They're in Alaska. So I got a gift from Dad about 3 weeks later. A box about that big, and here's a great big pair of heavy gloves.
While you were in Hawaii?
Yeah. he thought, and a note in there saying that, oh, this will help you to stay, your hands will stay warm.
Oh no, go sleep in an igloo, huh?
And I had a lieutenant named Mickey McGuire that when we were here in the States and over there too, played a lot of baseball, and Mickey was one of the coaches, and Mickey was censoring mail. And
Oh really? That was his job?
and he was censoring the mail so that you couldn't tell where you were.
Oh.
And my folks found out where we were because Mickey wrote at the bottom of it. He wrote it on there himself. Tom was in the Hawaiian Islands, not in Alaska.
So then they would know.
That's how they found out where I was.
So then you had a grass skirt instead of the mittens, huh? Doris, what was your biggest memory?
I was still only about 14 or 15 at that time.
Oh sure, but I mean...
And I don't really remember that, but I just remember my brother was graduating from high school, and so he immediately wanted to join up, and he went into the merchant marines then.
Oh wow.
And they didn't do any fighting, but they escorted ships, you know.
To England?
Well, across whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just,
Wow, that was where
and then I remember stamp books and no sugar and, you know, things being hard to buy.
a little bit more inconvenient than the way we fight war now, where
Yeah, or, you know, if you wanted to, you couldn't go to the meat market and buy what you wanted to, you had a coupon book where you could buy. It was rationing.
Sure.
Gas, you couldn't get gas. either.
No gas, you couldn't get gas in the cars.
And the stamps they handed out.
Well, they did, huh?
And then you were rationed if they're tires, you just could get
Yeah, tires.
one tire at a time. And
So-
she was in the service.
Oh, really?
No, I wasn't.
Not me.
What did you do in the service?
I was more or less secretary. I worked in the bond department of Cleveland, Ohio.
So you would issue bonds?
Well, we typed them out, you know.
everything by typewriter. Absolutely no computers, obviously.
No. They did have my BN machine, though, with the cards. So we type them off on this machine.
Okay.
And we had another machine on this side that you put the card in. It had a little window in, like your bills have, you know? And you put them in there and you wet it, and then you put it in your electric typewriter, and you type the address and the co-order. And a lot of people, it really surprised me when I was in the service, how many kids couldn't trust their parents if they sent their bonds home, that they'd spend them all. And I was flabbergasted about that, because I always told my folks, if you need the bond, cash them.
But a lot of kids were nervous.
But a lot of them said to know if I sent my bonds home like that, my mother and dad would spend them all. I wouldn't have a dime left when I got home.
What did they do with them then? Did they keep them themselves?
Well, I suppose they sent them to their bank or something.
Oh, really?
Well, you could put on it where you're co-owner or
Okay.
no co-owner, see. So.
They kind of do it.
Didn't it?
Huh?
Did it have to be a co-owner?
What?
A co-owner?
Yeah, co-owner meant that your folks or
Yeah,
you
so
put
they
their
could-
name down that
So
they
they,
could
in
cash.
case something happened to you, they could cash it.
Yeah.
So they'd almost do a direct deposit where it'd go right in their bank account.
I suppose I never thought
Wow.
about it.
That would happen a lot.
Yeah, that the kids didn't trust their parents. That's the way you're raised, you know.
Sure. Well, every family's different.
You were different, you know.
What was your biggest memory of that span of years?
Well, I think the rationing affected me more than anything. Not myself, but my dad
Sure.
had to be real careful. They had the ration cards that you'd get so much per month, and that's what you had to work it out so that you had enough to go to town. Or,
So it was your gas paycheck, essentially. If you ran out, you ran out.
yes.
Now, I'm aware that they rationed, but what items? You said gas, you said tires.
Gas and tires.
So one tire a month?
One tire, I don't remember the time. Like I say, it might have been one tire for 6 months or something like that.
Okay.
But you could only get one tire at a time.
So they obviously they rationed rubber
Exactly.
and sugar. They rationed.
When Tom and I were married right after the war ended, somebody gave us 10 pounds of sugar so we could have our wedding cake made.
No, that was your wedding gift. Was 10 pounds of sugar.
10 pounds of sugar.
Get out. That's wild.
Well, I don't know if it was actually the wedding gift, but they got it for us so we could have a cake made.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Food was rationed too, wasn't it?
So now, would it be staples like flour and butter, or was it fancier things? Sugar, obviously. What else was rationed?
Coffee.
Coffee. I suppose that was a big one. Were cigarettes ever rationed? I know they handed them out back then.
They had to ration all the food, didn't they? Because
I don't think cigarettes are ever rationed.
the military was so big, and they were trying to feed the military.
Yeah.
And some of our allies and stuff that they didn't have any. They had to ration everything to make sure there was enough to go around.
So everybody got rationed on pretty much all, even the staple food items, potatoes, flour.
I don't know. I wasn't home.
You were
in
out.
service and didn't have to worry. We got
You got fed.
Yeah. Well, so when we were in service, once a month we got a carton of cigarettes. And at that time I didn't smoke very much, so I'd buy a carton of cigarettes and then take one of these IBM boxes and take them, dump them out and send them to my dad because cigarettes were rationed at home.
So that was.
Because we got them, see.
So he could barter with them, smoke them, decide what he wanted to do with them.
Well, yeah, of course it was against the law to send them in the mail, but everybody did it.
Sure. So you couldn't send cigarettes in the mail?
Well, because we camouflaged them in a different type box. You didn't send the carton, you put them in a different size.
But it was commonplace, obviously.
So my dad had cigarettes.
Essentially, every day-to-day item. Now, obviously, would you say that is a big change? That's a big change. And you're saying finances, money, kids today spend much more freely.
Oh, yes.
I mean, if you watch TV
Our kids
advertising.
have got 10 times more than Tom and I ever had when we were growing up.
Well, money was a big thing in the military, like when when I was called in, I'd been in the guard for 2 years before I got called in, and I went in with the guard. So, and I had got up to corporal. Well, a corporal got $54 a month. And that was a hell of a lot of money. When Tom went in, he was drafted in, and when he went in, for the first 3 months, he got $21 a month.
A month.
Yes, and then when he got, after he got in 3 months, then they paid you $30 a month, wasn't it?
31, I think it was.
And that was a huge amount of money.
Yeah, because,
That was all the money we had.
but you got your uniforms, and you got into the shows for 3 cents, I think it was,
3 cents?
30 cents.
30 cents.
So
Still.
we used to make the round and go to, all the movies changed on Thursday, so we, on the weekends, we just make the big round. Sleepers was a good service stop. And we didn't pay any streetcar fare.
Really? They just let you ride for free?
And then you could go into any baseball game, or the baseball would come, or a football game, your uniform would just,
Which I think is a great thing.
yeah.
So I want to know some prices then, because I want to keep an idea. How much was a gallon of milk then?
29 cents maybe?
29?
A loaf of bread was 10 cents.
Loaf of bread was 10 cents. Now it's $2. Roughly.
$2.52.
You're very aware. What would you say? Okay, a nice average car, nothing fancy, nothing garbage, just middle of the range, middle of the road car.
What?
Middle of the road vehicle. If you're going to buy a car at that time, what would you pay for?
$500
$500 for a nice
for a new car.
Bob and Bill both put cars at the same time, brand new Chevrolet, and paid $850 a piece for them.
Really? Those are nice.
That was after the war.
That was after the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Once the rubber restriction and steel restriction was off.
In the war, during the war, you couldn't, a dealer, if he got one car a month.
Really?
That's all he can, he had to be very careful. They all had a list.
The waiting,
A waiting list.
Wow.
And they put the guy on that list, and when they got a car in, they'd call him and he could come down and get it. And of course, the dealers were, some of them were dishonest. They sold a car to the guy they liked, not the guy that was down on the bottom of the list or the top of the list, whichever way you're going.
So it worked like that back then too, huh?
Huh? They were crooked then. I mean, they were.
Not car salesmen.
They well, you didn't need a car salesman because you didn't have any cars.
Yeah. Wow.
Jeez.
You didn't see any used car lots with 40, 50 to
Dad, what
50 cars in it.
what did you pay? What did you mom pay for that first house over on Roosevelt Road by where the Votech is now? Do you remember?
No, I was gonna, $3,000 or $4,000, I think.
For the house?
Our rent was $18 a month with our payment to the bank. I was on a GI Bill. Yeah, I think we paid $18 a month with our rent.
4% interest.
Huh?
4% interest.
4%?
Yeah, when they had a GI Bill, the government
That
would
was,
issue
oh
you the
wow.
money.
I wish I could get 4%.
back then.
Yeah.
That was tough sledding back then, and when all your relatives came to visit you all the time too,
Yeah.
especially me.
What would you say since then, since World War II ended? I'd like you to name what you think, and it doesn't, whatever your opinion is, what do you think is one of the biggest inventions since then? And how, what do you think, if it's good, bad, do you think it's, do you wish you had it back then? What do you think one of the biggest inventions has been?
They, back here about, oh, probably 20 years ago, some guy came up with a post to put your mailbox on for rural carriers. And I always thought, by God, if I just would have thought a little bit, maybe I could have come up with something.
You could have thought of that.
And you worked where, Uncle Ed?
Yeah.
With the post
Ah,
office.
Well, obviously, anything electrical is a big improvement. The electrical business, from turning on a light to now we got computers and we can sit there and we got telephones, which is part of electricity, where you don't take lines with you anymore, and the radios and they, where we got the television and they got them up in the sky there, and you don't get it from the radio station or the television station. You get it off, they bounce it off the satellite up there, and then you get it down on your, that to me, the electrical business encompassing is just almost unbelievable. That's where we are, I think where we are today.
Because how many years did Uncle or did Grandpa Bill run the resort without electricity? How many years were they there before they actually had power down there? You remember, Uncle Tom?
How many years? Seemed like a long time. We had kerosene lamps.
Yeah.
Really?
And didn't you have to pull ice in during the winter to make an ice box for the summer?
That even fell in one year.
Fell in the water?
You fell in the ice?
Yeah. Hauling ice out, that fell in one year.
Really funny, huh?
No, I bet it's a little scary.
A little exhilarating?
He could have been a dead head. We're down in trouble, I'll tell you for sure.
Well, that was hard work too, getting ice out of the lake.
Where would you put it?
In the ice house, they used sawdust on it.
And you was it half buried, or
Yeah.
how? So that's how you
And that's
sawed
where
us.
the people kept their fish in making.
They keep it on ice.
Sorry about that.
that.
Didn't know you were
They
doing
cover
that.
it with sawdust to keep it from going up. Tom
Here comes the baby.
put out a lot of ice, and he can tell you about it.
No,
Would-
she's not coming.
So you covered up with sawdust? The ice?
Put in one roll of it, put another roll on top, and then cover the whole thing with.
How long into the summer would that
Yeah,
last?
how long was it?
Also,
All summer?
So on a day like this.
And then you would buy a block of ice, you know, you'd bring it home and you'd chip it away at it for your drinks. You might have a minnow in there.
No.
Really?
Yes.
And the resort
Unreal.
come over, they had fish they wanted to save and take home with them. So I'd jar loose a big block of ice and pick it up, and I'd tell them, you put your fish under this, and you can just chip that block up when you want to put some more under there. And many times they'd be there for a week, and I'd go to get that block of ice out, and they'd already gone, and here was a bunch of fish laying underneath that ice.
Wow.
Many times like that.
So on a day like today, that ice house.
see, there were no refrigerators in those days.
No.
Had
I
ice
still
boxes.
have a scar, Tom. Yeah, compared to the other.
What?
I have a scar on my forehead. This is Amy's. That you threw a chunk of ice out of the ice house and Cassie and Steve's.
Oh,
Still have it, huh?
There.
punk.
Geez, what? I'm gonna.
Okay. And here goes Pat, taking walking through one more time.
Sorry about that.
Uncle Ed, how old were you when Dad and Tom met in school? How old were you then?
I was probably 10.
I was 1935 was when I met Tom.
35 you met Tom?
First day of school in September. He and Johnny Wilkie, I was just walked out, I lived on the corner of 13th and Bemidji, and I walked out of the house, front door to the sidewalk, and I happened to look up, and there's two guys coming down the block. He and Johnny Wilkie had rented a room up just a block and a half from where we happened to live at that time. And they come down and they hollered at me, and so I stopped. Who the hell are those two characters? And we got talking, and well, what grade are you in? I said, I'm going to be in the 7th grade. Well, we are too. We're both going to be in the 7th grade. Well, we'll
I think you're wrong on that, though. We were just starting high school.
7th grade was in the high school.
No, not in those days. Freshman, you started high school as a freshman.
We were just starting high school.
You did wrestling.
In 1935. We were 13, Dad.
We had Central School was up 1 through 6, and we went from there. We went 7th and 8th and 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th at the high school.
You did before we did. Then.
Was he that much smarter than you, Uncle Tom?
They were, I guess it was the ninth grade, weren't you?
Yeah, ninth grade is
When you went to
ninth,
school.
tenth,
But him and Harry
4
Bruin,
years.
him and Harry Bruin were talking here a while ago about how old they were, and he says, well, gee, it's gotta be at least 40 years ago that we graduated from high school. Harry says, you mean we were 40 years old?
Yeah, we were, it was 1935, I know that, and when I met him.
So you met him?
And we went and we were going to high school together, and the three of us were the best of buddies all the way through till we graduated.
You two and Johnny Wilkie?
Until Johnny died.
And Johnny drowned in what year?
Johnny
You
died
think?
in 42, didn't he?
Was he just out of high school?
Right off the earth.
Yeah, we were out of high school. We got out of high school in 39.
Oh, okay.
And Johnny was, I think you were in the service, wasn't you, when he got called?
Yeah.
What was he over Duluth for?
He was working in the shipping yards over there.
He drowned in Superior, correct?
Yeah, he worked in Superior and lived in Duluth and went back and forth across
The water.
across the water.
Before the bridges were all there.
No, they had the bridge, but Johnny wasn't wasting
But he
his
had
time
that
way.
boat.
Oh, so he went in by boat instead of by
His
car?
boat and go across there, yeah.
And he got caught in the water.
He drowned.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know just when or when. Huh? Yeah, he took his boat.
He and I had
Everyone's
a
like,
bedroom and a kitchen, and then in
I'm
the
going to
wall,
have to go because
there,
Carla,
a door going
No, that's fine.
into the bathroom.
Carla and them are wanting.
And then there were two girls, had 2 rooms in the front
Yeah.
of the old house, and they shared that bathroom.
Tired and short.
Well, that should cover it up, huh?
Move over, Angie.
I had one more question. Now, I want to know when the first time, if you could name the year that you got television in your house for the first time. Because obviously me, I can
Can't
tell you,
tell
I
you,
can
I
almost
can't
name
tell you
that.
the day. The only reason we got television in our house, I was working, my brother Earl, rented a room in the basement of the house, and he was single, and so he bought the television and put the television in. Well, we would never have television at that time. We couldn't afford television at that time, but he bought the television, and of course that was black and white, and it was mostly snow.
Mostly white, huh?
By far mostly snow.
What I want to know is, and I think this is important, one that I thought, because Justin told me to ask it, but if you guys, all of you, could tell your grandkids or your great-grandkids or your nieces or nephews or younger people, my kids or my grandkids maybe, something that they should be sure to hold on to, or something that is important that you found growing up that has stuck with you through time, or even just throughout this last few years or whatever. What is something that they should be sure to do or try to do as far as people that you think is important? We'll start with you, Uncle.
God.
Huh?
Faith in God.
Faith in number one.
Good.
And I don't think there's enough of it. But anybody goes through St. Philip says it. And I don't mean if you go through St. Philip that you're an angel, because you're not. But you do get the basics there, and that should stick to you for the rest of your life. Of course, we had nuns when we went, and now there's regular.
Right. How about you, Uncle Tom?
I think I would advise my grandchildren and great-grandchildren not to drink till they're 21 years old. That's enough.
Yeah. Good.
Fair enough, yeah.
Excellent. Dad?
I would want good, honest friend. And I look back, and I've known him since 1935, and we're still the best of friends. And Ed, at the same time, I got to know Ed then too, because I used to go out to their house quite often and spend the night out there. But when Tom was driving the kids back and forth to school, I'd go out and stay overnight with him out there. And the three of us did a lot of hunting and fishing together, and today we're still as good a friend today as we were the first day we met him, and I'm real happy with having two such nice guys.
Thank you.
Excellent.
That's worth $1 right there.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, what I would say to your kids is try to hang on to a piece of Big Lake the rest of their life. Because to me, that means an awful lot out there.
Good deal.
You got a piece of it, hang on to it.
I agree. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been everything
Thank
I wanted
you
to
all.
have.
Yeah.
You guys have been
And more.
Angie, thank you. Thank
you,
you,
everybody.
Grandpa.
That ever happened in World War II is when they put all the Japs in America in those prison camps. Well, they weren't prison camps, but they were camps, they were like a prison
The
camp.
internment camp, yeah.
Internment camps. And because a lot of those Japs, I know, we didn't know who was what at that
It was
time.
a scary
Yeah,
time.
it was scary time. But a lot of those Japs were good Americans, and I think that was so wrong but they didn't know what to do. They didn't know if they were enemies or not.
Do you see that being repeated with the whole 9/11 thing with Arabic people?
Yeah.
Not only were they good, but they recruited a regiment out of the loyal Japs that were in there, the volunteers, the young kids that volunteered to stay, and they had a hell of a good regiment that went into combat in Italy and really did an outstanding job. And we'd have to say the same thing for the Negroes. The Negroes did the same thing.
You're proud to serve with them then?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna get up out of here.
Well, that's what Ryan is here for.
Do you,
to get out of here.
let me ask you just candidly, do you guys, are these 2-year anniversary family reunions? Should we continue these? Are these a good idea? Would you think these are too often or not enough, or
What?
doing this every 2 years, getting together like this? Should we keep this up? Or?
Great.
You absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, that's what we're here for. Couldn't have
That's why.
More for your kids than for
right?
the rest of us.
Yeah, we all started something, didn't we?
Exactly. Well, I'm glad we can. Thank you so much.
You're
Huh?
welcome.
You'll see if we can ride home.